Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Nilofer from Dipas, Delhi. Today we are going to talk about the general anatomy of the brain, blood and blood-brain barrier. This is from the paper Membrane Biophysics. And the objective for these are general features of the brain, major parts of the brain, directions and planes of section of the brain, and blood-brain barrier. Now coming to what is brain. The brain is, along with the spinal cord, it makes up the body's central nervous system. This is the main control system for the body's functions and abilities, and it regulates all the conscious and unconscious aspects of the life. Everyone of animal like mammals, reptiles, birds, fish, amphibian has a brain. However, the human brain is exceptional. Although it is not largest, it gives the power to imagine, speak and problem solve. The brain performs an incredible number of functions, and all of these tasks are coordinated, controlled and regulated by an organ. Brain is made up of around 100 billion neurons, and these neurons are also called nerve cells. Neurons have the incredible ability to gather and transmit electrochemical signals. Neurons are highly specialized to transmit messages from one part of the body to the another part, and these signals are called nerve impulses. Neurons share the similar characteristics and have the same framework as other cells, but the electrochemical feature let them send out signals over long distances up to several feet and send messages to each other. The brain is main organ of the central nervous system. It is placed in the head and protected by the skull. Brain has the same general structure as the brain of other mammals, but cerebral cortex is the more developed in humans. The brain is the largest and the most complex organ of the human body. It is the center for intelligence, emotions, behavior and memory. The human brain is composed of neurons, glial cells and blood vessels. The neurons number has been shown to be on average about 86 billions in adult human brain, with a nearly same number of non-neuronal cells. The nerve cells in the brain are known as neurons, which make up the so-called gray matter. The neurons transmit and receive electrochemical signals from the rest of the body, and these signals are communicated via a network of nerve fibers called dendrites and axons, also white matters of the brain. The brain is secured from damage by several layers of defenses. The blood-brain barrier provides protection to the brain from its environment. General features. The human brain is the most complex organ in the entire body. Adult human brain weighs on average about 1.3 to 1.5 kilogram, or about 2% of total body weight, with a volume of around 1130 centimeter cube in women and 1260 centimeter cube in men, although there is considerable individual difference. The living brain is a soft, having a gel-like consistency. Although referred as to gray matter, the live cortex is pinkish beige in color and slightly off-white in the interior. The brain is divided into parts. These parts include the cerebellum, the limbic system, and the brain stem. Human brain is made up of nerve cells, glial cells, and blood vessels. It is responsible for controlling the behavior, processing information, and coordinating body movements. Protection of the brain. There are many layers of protection in the brain. These are the skull, cranial meninges, cerebrospinal fluid, and blood-brain barrier. The brain is secured from the damage by several layers of defenses. The outermost are the bones of skull. Underneath the skull are meninges, a series of sturdy membranes that surround the brain and spinal cord. Within the meninges, fluid cushions the brain. Still, the brain can undergo damage, become diseased, or malfunction. These conditions may include physical injuries, cancer, and ruptures of blood vessels that supply the brain. The blood-brain barrier separates the circulating blood from the cerebrospinal fluid. The endothelial cells in tight junctions create the boundary between the two fluids. They perform the function to limit the flow of substances in the area. Main parts of the brain and their functions. Brain evolved from ganglia of invertebrates. Regardless of animal, brains have the following parts. It is made up of 4 major parts: cerebrum, cerebellum, limbic system, and the brain stem. Coming to the first one, the cerebrum. The cerebrum or cortex constitutes the largest part of the human brain. It is associated with a great number of important brain functions such as action and thought processing. The cerebral cortex is further subdivided into 4 sections. These are called lobes. These lobes have their own respective functions, and the name of the lobes are frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. Frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is associated with performing functions like planning, expressive language, movement, reasoning, emotions, and higher level cognitive functions. It is located at the frontal portion of the brain. Next one is parietal lobe. This is associated with orientation, movement, recognition, perception of stimuli. It is also responsible for processing the information sent to the brain by the tactile sensors like pain, pressure, and touch. It is positioned in the center of the brain. The next lobe is occipital lobe. This occipital lobe is associated with the visual processing. It is situated at the back of the brain. And the fourth one is temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is responsible for perception and recognition of auditory stimuli, speech, and forming memories. It is located at the bottom of the brain. The cerebellum. The cerebellum or little brain resembles the cerebrum, for it has a highly folded surface or cortex and distributed into hemispheres. This structure of the brain is responsible for coordination of movements, balance, and posture. Even though the cerebellum is smaller in size, it contains more neurons than the entire brain itself. It is situated at the back of the brainstem and on top of the bones. The third part of the brain is the limbic system. The limbic system, it is often called as emotional brain. It lies in the cerebrum. It is sometimes called the emotional brain because it is associated with emotional response. This system contains 4 sections. First one is thalamus, hypothalamus, amygdala, and hippocampus. Coming to the first one, thalamus. Thalamus is a large mass of grey matter that lies deep inside the forebrain at the topmost part of the diencephalon. It performs sensory and motor functions. Almost all sensory information except olfaction sent to the brain centers this structure, and from there it is sent to the overlying cortex by neurons. The second one is hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is involved in functions like circadian rhythms, homeostasis, thirst, hunger, emotions, and control of autonomic nervous system. In addition to these functions, it also controls the pituitary, which is responsible for producing hormones. The hypothalamus is positioned ventral to the thalamus and it is a part of diencephalon. Amygdala. The amygdala is located in the temporal lobe and is involved in fear, memory and emotion. It is located just beneath the front and medial sections of the temporal lobe. Next is hippocampus. Hippocampus is situated in the basal medial portion of the temporal lobe. The hippocampus is the most important in learning and memory building. It is where short-term memories are converted into permanent memories or long-term memories. Moreover, the hippocampus also help in recalling the spatial relationship about us in the world. Brainstem. The brainstem is positioned underneath the limbic system. This section of the brain controls the reflexes and autonomic functions like breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure, fine movements of the face and limbs, and visceral functions like digestion. It consists of midbrain, pons, and medulla. The first one is midbrain. The midbrain is situated at the mouth of the brainstem and it is made up of tegmentum and tectum. It is involved in the functions like vision, hearing, body movement and eye movement. The cerebral peduncle is situated at the anterior segment of the midbrain. It is basically a huge bundle of axons that plays a significant role in convey information and controlling voluntary motor functions. Pons. Pons is in charge for performing sensory analysis and controlling motor functions, and messages entering in the brain from the ears first enter the pons. It is responsible for maintaining levels of consciousness and sleep. Some structures of it are linked to the cerebellum and thus are involved in posture movement. It is a part of hindbrain. Third part is medulla. The medulla is positioned in between the spinal cord and the pons. It is the tail end of the brainstem and it is involved in controlling vital body functions such as heart rate and breathing. Meninges. The primary function of cranium and cranial meninges is to protect the brain. The brain and the spinal cord are covered and protected by 3 layers of membranes collectively called meninges. These consist of Dura Mater, Arachnoid Mater and Mater. The meninges also support blood vessels and contain cerebrospinal fluid. These are the structures implicated in meningitis. It is an inflammation of meninges which, if severe, may become encephalitis and inflammation of the brain. Dura Mater. The Dura Mater is a strong, thick membrane that closely lines the inside of the skull. It is composed of 2 layers. The outer layer attaches to the bone and meningeal layer or inner layer close to the brain. These are fused and separate only to form venous sinuses. The dura makes compartments. These special dural folds are of 3 types. Lex cerebri separates the 2 hemispheres of the cerebrum. Felix cerebri separates the lobes of cerebellum, and the third one separates the cerebrum from the cerebellum. Arachnoid Mater. This is a thin, web-like structure that covers the entire brain. It is the middle layer of meninges. It is made up of elastic tissue. The space between the dura and arachnoid membrane is called subdural space. The gap between the arachnoid and pia mater is called subarachnoid space. It is filled with cerebrospinal fluid or CSF. All blood vessels entering the brain as well as cranial nerves pass through this space. Now coming to the third, this is the innermost layer and hugs the brain surface following its folds and grooves. The pia mater has several blood vessels that go deep into the brain. It fuses with the ependyma, the membranous lining of the ventricles, to form a choroid plexus. This is showing the meningeal layer in details. In this figure, you can see how they are arranged. The first one you can see the skull. The next three are the meningeal layers, 1, 2 and 3, and then the brain. The folded structure you can see. This is the brain structure. And the B, in the figure B, you can see these all three layers in details. The sixth one is ventricles and cerebrospinal fluid. The hollow fluid-filled cavities in the brain are called ventricles. Inside the ventricle is a ribbon-like formation called the choroid plexus that makes clear colorless CSF. It flows within and around the brain and spinal cord to help cushion it and protect it from physical and chemical injuries. This circulating fluid is continuously being absorbed and replenished. It takes a quantity of oxygen, glucose, and various substances from the blood to neurons and neuroglia. The total volume of CSF in the adult ranges from 140 to 270 ml. The volume of the ventricle is about 25 ml. CSF is produced at the rate of 600 to 700 ml per day. Circulation of CSF. In this picture you can see the circulation of this CSF in the brain or in central nervous system. The CSF circulates in the subarachnoid space around the brain and spinal cord, and CSF is produced inside the ventricles deep within the brain. The brain tissue can be divided into two major classes, the grey matter and white matter. Grey matter, it is composed of mainly unmyelinated neurons, the majority of which are interneurons. The grey matter regions are the regions of nerve connections and processing. The next one is white matter. The white matter is made of mostly myelinated neurons that connect the regions of the grey matter to each other and to the other parts of the body. Myelinated neurons transmit nerve signals much faster than unmyelinated axons do. The white matter performs the function of information highway of the brain to speed the connections between distant part of the brain and the body. Directions and planes of section. The brain is a three-dimensional structure, can be cut into three different planes of sections. The position in the brain can be generalized in three planes are the X, Y and Z planes. The brain can be cut on any of these planes and these are called the coronal planes, the sagittal planes and the horizontal plane. Coming to the first one, coronal plane, or it is also called frontal plane. It is a XY plane perpendicular to the ground. It divides the brain into dorsal and ventral, means back and front or posterior and anterior portions. The second one is sagittal plane. This is a Y and Z plane. This is perpendicular to the ground. The sagittal plane divides the brain into right and left portions. The third one is horizontal plane. This is an X and Z plane. This is parallel to the ground. It divides the superior and the inferior part of the brain. Now coming to blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is permeability barrier that separates the brain from the circulatory system. It protects the central nervous system from many substances like viruses, bacteria and harmful chemicals. So, while regulating the transport of necessary substances, the blood-brain barrier is formed by monolayer of specialized endothelial cells which are connected by tight junctions and transduce signal from the vascular system and from the brain. Astrocytes are essential to create and contribute to the differentiation of the blood-brain barrier. Brain capillaries form a tight barrier except in specialized areas. The structure and the function of BBB, which is abbreviation for blood-brain barrier, is dependent upon the complex interaction between the different cell types such as endothelial cells, astrocytes and pericytes and the extracellular matrix. Supporting cells in the brain. In addition to neurons, the nervous system contains large number of other types of cell called neuroglia, which support, protect and nourish neurons. Glial cells are quite different from neurons. They give support and protection to the nerve cells but do not transmit nerve impulses themselves. Glia are non-neuronal cells that form myelin around the neurons and hold them in position, maintain homeostasis and provide support and protection for the neurons in the central and peripheral nervous system. Types of glia. The first one is microglia. Microglia are specialized macrophages. They are capable of phagocytosis and these protect neurons of central nervous system. These cells are found in all brain areas and spinal cord. Microglial cells are relatively smaller than macroglial cells with changing shapes and oblong nuclei. The next is macroglia. Macroglia derive from ectodermal tissues and they are of different types. First one, astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, ependymal cells, radial cells, Schwann cells, satellite glia or anterior. Now coming to the first one, astrocytes or astroglial cells. These are the most abundant types of the macroglia and are found throughout the central nervous system. An astrocyte is a star-shaped cell that has many processes extending from its cell body to the surrounding networks of nerve fibers. The next one is oligodendrocytes. These cells are the cells which wrap axons in central nervous system with their cell membrane, forming a myelin sheet. The myelin sheet provides insulation to axons that permits electrical signals to spread more efficiently. Oligodendrocytes have fewer and thinner processes than astrocytes and there are no gap junctions. The next one is ependymal cells. These cells are found in central nervous systems. These cells are involved in the formation and secretion of cerebrospinal fluid and they beat their cilia to help circulate the CSF and make up the blood CSF barriers. Next one is radial glial cells. These cells arise from neuroepithelial cells after the onset of neurogenesis. Next cells are Schwann cells. These cells are found in peripheral nervous system, that is around the nerves of the extremities of the body. Example, they are located in the skin. Schwann cells provide myelination to the axons in peripheral nervous systems. Next cell types are satellite glial cells. These cells are small cells that trap neurons in sensory, sympathetic and parasympathetic ganglia. The last one is the anterior glial cells. These cells are found in the intrinsic glia of the digestive system. So students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. So we have learned that the brain is the main organ of the human central nervous system. It is located in the head, protected by the skull, and the brain is divided into parts. These parts include cerebrum, the cerebellum, limbic system, and the brainstem. The human brain is made up of nerve cells, glial cells, and blood vessels. Brain is responsible for controlling the behavior, processing information, and coordinating body movements. The blood-brain barrier is a permeability barrier that separates the brain from the circulatory system. It also protects the central nervous system from many substances. The blood-brain barrier is formed by monolayers of specialized cells. These are called endothelial cells, and these cells are connected by tight junctions. They transduce signals from the vascular system and from the brain.